My body still burns where his hands touched. And the problem is that these hands are from my nephew. Yes, you heard right. That boy I helped create. And today, it is the man who taught me what the true fire was. It all started with the most innocent excuse in the world: dance classes. A damn family party put me in this situation, and he, with that smile of who knows exactly what he does, offered to be my teacher. Little did I know that he wouldn't just be my instructor. He became the choreographer of my perdition. With each step rehearsed, with each complicit look in the mirror of the room, the family barrier became dust. Respect gave way to desire. Innocence has become the purest and raw sexual tension I have ever felt in my life. It was no longer about dancing. It was about how much we could touch ourselves unintentionally, how much we could provoke ourselves before one of us gave in, until the night when there was no more choreography, just instinct. And he dominated me in a way that I never imagined. And secretly, I begged to happen. Are you curious to know where this is going? Then subscribe to the channel now, because you won't want to miss the rest. The idea came in the middle of a Sunday lunch, the kind of noisy family event where decisions are made by acclamation, not common sense. My cousin, always the organizer, announced this talent party. Before I could roll my eyes and take another mayonnaise spoon, my mother threw the bomb. Flavia dances super well. She lied blatantly to an audience of uncles and cousins who agreed on the spot. The incentive choir was instant and suffocating. It was an avalanche of "you need to do that. It will be amazing." Represents our family part. Trying to argue was useless. Any refusal would be seen as freshness, an act of snobby. I was cornered with a yellow smile on my face while inside the panic was beginning to bubble. I didn't dance well. I barely danced. The image of myself stumbled on a makeshift stage in front of everyone already caused me chills. The pressure was not subtle. It wasn't a subpoena. My younger sister was already plans for my costume, and my uncles argued which song I should use. They were not inviting me. They were pushing me into the abyss of public embarrassment. I felt like a teenager again, without control over my own choices, forced to participate in something that was terrified so as not to spoil family harmony. That night, I went to bed with anxiety that weighed on my chest. Fear was not just shame, but to disappoint everyone. I needed an exit, a miracle, anything that saved me from that nightmare. And it was in the midst of this desperation that the most unlikely and dangerous solution, battery at my door, salvation, came in the form of a video connection. On the other side of the screen was he, Lucas, my nephew. He had heard over my dilemma through the family gossip that travels faster than the light. He had that easy smile, the same one he wore as a child, and broke something, but now it was the smile of a man in 20, full of confidence that I definitely didn't have. "Aunt, relax. I help you," he said with a simplicity that almost made me cry with relief. Lucas was a phenomenal dancer. He turned any rhythm into pure art and did it since adolescence. The whole family was proud of him. The idea was perfect, undeniable. Who could see wickedness in a dedicated nephew helping his aunt in trouble? It was the ideal excuse for everyone and my salvation board. Of course, I accepted on time. The gratitude I felt was immense, sweeping away all the panic. That moment, he was my hero, the guardian angel that would save me from ridicule. We combined the schedules and the place, my house, where we would have more privacy for rehearsals. Everything seemed light, fun, a family project that would yield good laughs and, with luck, a decent presentation. Little did I know that the word privacy would gain a completely new meaning within those four walls. I was so focused on solving the dance problem that I didn't realize I was creating an infinitely greater problem. I invited my nephew to enter my house, but who really came? In was a man who was about to turn my world upside down. The first rehearsal started exactly as I imagined, a comic disaster. We pushed the furniture out of the room. Lucas turned on a lively song on his cell phone, and I felt the most clumsy person on the planet. My movements were hard. My feet seemed to have their own desire, and I was wrong to the most basic steps. He laughed, not in a mean way, but with a genuine fun that made me relax a little. "Aunt, you are thinking too much. You have to feel the music," he said, demonstrating the steps with a supernatural fluidity. I tried to imitate, and the result was a mess. We were laughing so much that my belly hurt. That lightness was good. It was safe. It was exactly what I expected. A patient nephew teaching his clumsy aunt, so everything changed. To teach me a simple turn, he approached. "Let me guide you," he said quietly. He stayed behind me and put one hand on my waist and the other on my arm. The moment his fingers touched my skin, an electric current traveled my body. It was sudden, unexpected, and strong. My laugh died in the throat and my breath got stuck. My brain recorded the shock. It was just a touch, a gesture of instruction. But my body reacted in a completely different way, a form that had nothing familiar or aunt. I walked away quickly, disguising with a cough. He didn't seem to notice, or pretended not to notice, but the air in the room had changed. The innocence of that first rehearsal had just broken. In the second rehearsal, the atmosphere of play no longer existed. Lucas has arrived more focused, more serious. He said that if we wanted to progress, I needed to stop fighting the movements and trust him. The word trust was echoing in my mind as he chose a slower, more sensual song. It was a bachelor, a rhythm I didn't know, but my body understood when it required closeness. He positioned me in front of him. "The base of the bachelor is the connection. You need to feel where I'm taking you," he explained. His hands returned to my waist, but this time the touch was different. It was firmer, more deliberate. He pulled me closer, reducing the space between our bodies until I could feel the heat that emanated from his chest. My heart began to beat wildly. I was rigid like a statue, and he noticed. He leaned over and whispered near my ear, his voice a little hoarse. "Relax, Aunt. Stop thinking. Feels the music." He paused and then added softly, "And feel my hand. She will tell you everything you need to do." Those words were a direct command, not to my feet, but to every nerve in my body. I obeyed. I closed my eyes for a second and focused only on his touch. His hand on my back guided me with an authority that was both scary and exciting. He was no longer Lucas, my nephew. He was the man who was in control, and I, the woman who was first beginning to like the idea of being led by him. Lucas's playlist has become the soundtrack of our transgression. He abandoned the pop and animated songs from the first class and set up a selection that seemed calculated to destroy us. It started with sensual backets, where our hips were forced to meet at an intimate pace. The lyrics spoke of forbidden love, uncontrollable desire, and he sang low as we danced, looking straight into my eyes. Then came the kizomba. He explained to me that it was a very connected Angola dance, almost without space between the bodies. And it was true. Our torsos were glued, our legs intertwined in slow and wavy movements. It was impossible not to feel every muscle moving against mine. Impossible not to feel his breath in my neck. Each step was a caress disguised as choreography. The musical selection was a journey. Each song pushed us a little further away from the family's safe territory. He introduced Zouk with his head movements and the deep delivery the woman needs to have in the partner. Trusting him meant throwing my head back, completely vulnerable in his arms, as our bodies moved as one. Music gave us permission to do what the words could not. The playlist has become our accomplice. When the notes of those songs began, the world out there was disappeared. We were no longer aunt and nephew. We were only two bodies responding to a call, a beat that spoke directly to the desire that grew between us. Music was our excuse, our refuge, and at the same time, the poison that drunk us with each essay. There was an exact time when the change happened. It was not gradual. It was like becoming a switch. We were in the middle of a complicated sequence. I missed the step for the third time and stopped, frustrated with my hands on my waist. "I can't get this part," I complained, panting. He stopped the song and walked to me, getting a few inches away. I raised my head to look at him, ready to hear another technical instruction. But what I found was not my teacher's patient look. The kind smile was gone. Her eyes were darker, intense, and they slowly toured my face before they went down my neck and stopping my chest, which climbed and descended with the heavy breath of the exercise. That look had nothing paternal or fraternal. It was a man's gaze enjoying a woman's body. A look that undressed completely there in the middle of my room. I felt my face burn, a wave of heat spreading all over my body. I was paralyzed, unable to look away or say anything. The silence extended for a few seconds that seemed eternity. He finally blinked, as if he got out of a trance. "Let's go again," he said, the voice a little more serious than usual. But it was too late. The dynamics between us had broken and redone in something new and dangerous. I was no longer just Aunt Flavia. At that moment, under the weight of that look, I became an object of desire for him. And the scariest part was that my body reacted with a shiver of pure excitement. Our rehearsals have changed to the night. The excuse was that our schedules were complicated, but we both knew the truth. The night offered a different type of coverage, an intimacy that daylight did not allow. With a silent house and the rest of the sleeping world, the atmosphere in my room became dense, loaded with unvit possibilities. The intensity of training increased. We danced for hours, the sweat shining in our skins, making each touch, every slide of a hand, even more intimate. The sound that filled the room was just the sensual music of his playlist and the heavy sound of our breaths mixing in the air. Physical tiredness mixed with a growing tension that left us electric. There was always an excuse to extend the rehearsal. "Just this song," he said, and I agreed without hesitation. "I think we need to pass that transition again," I suggested, just to feel his hands on my waist once more. We asked food, we opened a bottle of wine to relax the muscles. We were building a bubble, a world of ours that existed between 10 in the evening and 2 in the morning. It was at these times, sitting on the floor of the room after the dance, that the silences became more dangerous. We talked about everything and nothing, avoiding the only subject that really mattered, the attraction that pulsed between us as a third heart in the room. Each night, the border was faster. The pretext of dance was increasingly fragile, and we both knew it was just a matter of time until we no longer needed him. The choreography that Lucas created was a work of art and a statement of war against my self-control. He drew it to tell a story, that of a man seducing a reluctant woman who slowly surrenders to passion. It was our story, disguised in dance, steps, and each movement was a silent confession of what we felt. There was a part where I should walk away, and he pulled me back, wrapping my body with his from behind. My back stood into his chest, and his hand slid dangerously down my belly. There was a dive where I leaned back, completely delivered into his arms, and he slowly lifted me, our faces inches away. Our looks met, and the world stopped. The most lethal movement was one in which he kneeling, and I had to rotate around him, my leg getting involved in his. The proximity was indecent, an explicit invitation. The choreography forced us to touch, to brush, to intertwine in ways that left little to the imagination. It was a perfect script for our desire, allowing our bodies to say everything our mouths had no courage. Each essay of that choreography was delicious torture. It was like playing with fire, getting closer and closer to the flame, testing the boundaries. Dance has become our secret language. In those 3 minutes of music, we were not relatives. There were no rules. We were only one man and a woman, performing a performance that was less about art and more about the inevitable surrender. My mind was on a state of alert. A deafening alarm sounded constantly, shouting that all that was wrong, forbidden, unthinkable. I looked at myself in the mirror in the morning and didn't recognize myself. Who was that woman who told the minutes for her nephew to arrive? Who chose the rehearsal clothes thinking about how she would move? How would he see her? The fault was a constant companion. But my body? That traitor didn't give a damn about my mental sermons. He had his own agenda, his own wills. When Lucas arrived, my heart would shoot like a teenager in love. When he touched me, my skin shivered instantly, even in the most casual touches. I was catching my breath as he approached, inhaling his perfume as if it were oxygen. The betrayal was more evident during the dance. My mind wanted to maintain distance, create a barrier, but my hips seemed to fit into his instinct. My arms found his neck without me having to think. My body leaned toward him, seeking his warmth, his strength. It was a brutal internal battle, and I was losing ugly. The worst part was the loneliness of this conflict. I couldn't confess to anyone. For the world, I was the dedicated aunt being helped by her talented nephew, but inside I was a battlefield. The right and correct rational woman I thought was being defeated by a version of myself that I didn't know. A woman guided by instincts and an overwhelming desire that ignored blood and common sense. My sister appeared one afternoon with a costume. It was a vibrant Latin red dance dress. But the problem was not the color. The problem was the absence of fabric. He had a generous neckline. His back was almost naked, and the skirt was short, full of cracks that would reveal my legs. With each movement, it was a dress made to seduce, not for a family presentation. "Try it," she insisted excitedly. With my heart in my hand, I dressed it. When I looked in the mirror, I hardly recognized myself. The woman there seemed another, bolder, more dangerous. That same night, Lucas arrived for the rehearsal. I took a deep breath and left the room. I said we needed to test the movements with the costume. It was an excuse, and we both knew. When he saw me, he stopped talking in the middle of the sentence. His eyes, the same eyes that had already stripped me before, now had a clear target. They toured every inch of my body, exposed by the red dress. I saw his jaw cracker slightly, and he swallows hard. He said nothing, but the silence was louder than any compliment. It was a silence loaded with approval and a palpable desire. Dance with that dress changed all over again. Fine fabrics seemed not to exist among our sweaty skins. Each turn, each raised, was a new revelation, a new provocation. I felt completely exposed, vulnerable, and at the same time incredibly powerful. The costume was no longer a prop. It was the materialization of our temptation, the final piece that removed the last layer of denial between us. We had a whole body mirror in the room, which we brought to correct the postures. During the rehearsals, I avoided looking at our reflection. It was easier to focus on the steps, the touch, the music. Looking at the image of the two together was too confronting. But that night, the night of the rehearsal with the costume, Lucas forced me to face the truth. We were at the height of the choreography, where he held me from behind, his hands spread to my abdomen, our bodies moving in perfect sync. "Look at us, Aunt," he said, his voice a serious whisper in my ear. My heart stopped. Slowly, I raised my eyes to the mirror. The image that looked at me back took my breath. I didn't see an aunt and a nephew. I saw a couple. I saw a tall and strong man holding a woman in a sensual red dress. I saw his hand possessively on his waist. I saw her hair thrown to the side, the exposed neck. I saw their eyes, his delivery, his dominance. I saw chemistry, tension, the story of desire stamped on our reflection. Our eyes met in the mirror. At that moment, all the barriers, all the excuses, all the lies we told ourselves fell to the ground. There was no way to deny it. What the mirror showed us was the naked and raw truth. In that look, shared through the glass, a silent decision was made by both. The dance would end, but what was reflected there was just beginning. The official rehearsal of the night was over. The presentation would be in 2 days, and the choreography was perfect. There was no reason to continue. I turned off the song, and the silence fell on us like a heavy blanket. We were both panting, stopped in the middle of the room, avoiding each other's eyes. The energy between us was so dense that I could feel it on the skin. "I think for today it's just," I said, my voice coming out weak, trembling. I needed him. To leave if he stayed a minute more? I didn't know what would happen. He just nodded, but did not move. He continued there, looking at me, his fixed eyes on mine. Outside, a heavy rain began to fall. The sound of the drops hitting the window, filling the tense silence. He walked slowly toward me. Each step of his was deliberate, heavy with intention. My heart hammered my ribs, a wild beat that accompanied the storm outside. When he stopped in front of me, we were so close that I could see the sweat drops on his forehead. He raised his hand, but instead of touching me, he pointed to the stereo. "Just once more," he said. His voice was almost a growl. A request that was not a request, but a statement. It was not about dance. We both knew that. It was our password, the final excuse we needed to cross the line we had circumvented for weeks. I didn't respond with words. I just nodded once. And with that gesture, I gave him the permission he expected. He didn't turn on the song. That just again didn't need a soundtrack. The storm outside was the only song that mattered now. Silence inside the room was different from everyone else. It was not an embarrassing or hesitant silence. It was a silence of anticipation, the moment of calm that precedes the fury of a hurricane. He slowly raised his hand and touched my face. The gesture was incredibly smooth, almost reverent. His thumb drew my cheek, went down my chin, stopping my neck, feeling my folding pulse. I closed my eyes, surrendering to that touch I wanted for so long. Each nerve on my body was on fire, waiting for what would come next. The air was heavy, electric. We could smell the rain, the smell of our own sweat, the intoxicating scent of desire. Time seemed to stop. Every second was stretched, full of tension that was almost unbearable. It was the final moment of choice, the last step before the abyss, and we were both standing there, hand in hand, ready to jump. He leaned over, and I thought he was going to kiss me. But he stopped, his lips to a millimeter of mine. He did not break eye contact. His eyes asked the final question, the definitive confirmation. I answered, tilting my face to his, closing the missing distance. And the moment our lips touched, the first thunder of the night sounded, as if the sky were giving us its furious approval. That first kiss was not kind or hesitant. It was an explosion. It was the release of weeks of accumulated tension, unlicensed eyes, disguised touches. It was hungry, desperate, as if we were trying to consume each other. His hands, who once guided me firmly in the dance, now grabbed me with a possession that left me without air. One hand on my neck, pulling me closer, the other at the base of my back, pressing my body against his dot. There was no choreography anymore. The dance was now another. It was raw, instinctive. He lifted me from the floor and carried me to the couch, never breaking the kiss. I felt light, powerless under your strength. And never in life I had felt so alive. Each barrier that existed, each title, every social rule was sprayed at that time. He was not my nephew. I was not your aunt. We were a man and woman taken by an overwhelming desire. He dominated every moment of that night. Every touch, every kiss. Each movement was led by him with the same confidence and authority with which he led our dance. But now, the stage was different, and the demand required of me was total, and I surrendered. I handed my body, my confidence, my sanity. I responded to your dominance with a submission that surprised me. That night, I discovered a part of me that didn't know it existed. A part that longed for being conducted, losing control, for surrendering to something forbidden and dangerous. He explored every inch of my body and my soul. And in the midst of the storm, both outside and inside us, I allowed myself to be completely his. On a night where sin had the sweetest taste I had ever proved, the sunlight entering the curtain crack was cruel. She brought with her not only the new day, but also the hard and cold reality. I opened my eyes, and the first thing I saw was his face, sleeping quietly beside me. For a second, a heat of satisfaction ran through my body as I remembered the night before. The sensations, the touches, the intensity, the pleasure was undeniable. But then consciousness collapsed over me like a cold wave. He was Lucas, my nephew. The weight of this truth was overwhelming. What were we done? The morning silence was accusing. The red dress thrown on the floor seemed evidence of a crime. Each object in the room was a witness to our transgression. The guilt began to infiltrate, a dark spot in the brightness of pleasure. He woke up and our looks crossed. There was no confidence of the night before in his eyes, but a shadow of uncertainty, perhaps even fear. The embarrassment hovered in the air, as palpable as the desire had been hours before. How do we act now? What do we say? The rules we broke could not simply be fixed. The way back no longer existed. We get up in silence, wearing our clothes, and our guilt. Breakfast was the quietest meal of my life. The intimacy of the night had been replaced by a strange and painful distance. Finally, looking at the cup of coffee as if she had all the answers, I asked the question that hanged upon us, the devastating question that would define everything. What now, Lucas? The question, and now. He was suspended in the air, with no answer, because there was no easy answer. There was no manual for what to do after crossing such a fundamental line. Lucas looked at me, his face a mixture of desire and anguish. He didn't know what to say, and I don't either. We were lost in the territory we created ourselves. Our secret has become an entity of its own. It is something that unites us with a magnetic force. We share an intimacy that no one in the world can understand, a secret that isolates us from the rest of the family and the world when our looks intersect at a Sunday lunch. There is a universe of meaning that only the two of us understand. This connection is powerful, addictive, but this same secret is a clock bomb. He slowly destroys us. The guilt, the fear of being discovered, the impossibility of living what we feel openly. This erodes us inside. The family party happened and we danced. People applauded, praised our incredible chemistry. They knew the truth behind that chemistry. So the story does not end with a happy or sad ending. It ends with a question mark. We continue to find ourselves in hiding, stealing moments that give us life and fill us with guilt at the same time. We live in a limbo, trapped between what society dictates and what our bodies scream. This is our new normal. And the question that remains not only for us, but for you who heard everything, is a forbidden love like this can have some future?